a hoarder house, it's because there's something wrong. Something wrong, and that person needs help. And so we got to figure out how to help these people. And so it's tough. Now, people that buy at the foreclosure sale, now they don't deal with that too much. They do deal with it, but they're buying at the sale, and then they typically will hire an attorney, or they'll go and serve a vacate notice as soon as the foreclosure's up if somebody's living in there, and then they're in the position of asking that person to move out. And that's a tough part of the business. Those are the worst case scenarios. Now, in a lot of cases, it's husband and wife got divorced, they went different directions. She wasn't going to pay, he wasn't going to pay, and so they say the heck with it, and then next thing you know, it goes through foreclosure. A lot of times if somebody gets transferred and they can't sell it or don't want to sell it. So with the normal, I guess, the normal exchange of properties through people's lives changing, that happens. But occasionally you get into these sad cases. And, we had a student that bought a property at a sale, and we got to know the lady that was living there, and all of a sudden, it's like that student's in the position of having to evict that lady, or either just let her live there. She paid over $100,000 for the property, and he had to let her live there for essentially free, or he had to evict her, or had to help find housing for her. So I know that sounds like a Debbie Downer, but that's really you gotta help people as much as you can. And it's a tough business. So that can happen at the foreclosure too. So if you buy at the foreclosure, you can oftentimes deal with that. And a lot of people, they don't want to deal with it, so they won't buy something unless the house is empty, and that's not a bad strategy. You can't save the world, in fact, the United States, that's what they try to do. They try to save the world, and then they can't pay their own bills, and our deficit keeps going up. And so now when you pay taxes, you're paying interest on the taxes because we can't retire the debt. And it's because we're trying to take care of the world. And that's fine. But when you decide to take care of the world, you're writing a check, or you're having your children write the check that they've got to make good later. So anyway, now that's during the foreclosure. Now there's post foreclosure, and that's where you can buy from the lenders or the individual. So a lot of times it's an individual, community bank, credit union, large institution, all kinds of people foreclose on properties, and each one of those give you different opportunities. And when I first started in the 80s, we were buying foreclosures. We were buying nothing but REOs. That was the easiest thing in the world to buy, because when you deal with the bank, then the bank says, it's like there's no emotion involved when the bank's involved. It's like, hey, this is what we're selling it for. Are you in or out? And you say, I'm in. And then you get everybody to sign off on the documents. Next thing you know, the closing happens. Nobody's mad. Nobody's upset. There's no fuss or muss. There's no evicting people. There's no trying to solve people's problems that are living or holding on to the house because they don't have any other choices. So, hopefully I didn't paint such a sad, sorry picture of that type of investing. But this is the reason why people do pay attention to foreclosures, is because there's a real time limit. In Texas, and every state has them, but in Texas, the time limit it's the first Tuesday of the month. So when they give you that notice, they're required to give you that notice 21 days out. When they give you that notice, then on that Tuesday, before that, the 21 days before that Tuesday, you get the notice, and 21 days later, it transfers title. So a lot of investors, they know that that's where motivated sellers are, and usually when you're dealing with motivated sellers, it gives you opportunity for creative deals and maybe larger discounts.
So I want to back up, and I want to make a comment, and then I got my next question. But before I do that, who's enjoying this? If you're watching, raise your hand if you're liking this stuff here. No, I'm just kidding, because we can't see that. But do hit the like button. Do hit the like button and leave a comment. What's your favorite thing that Ray has said tonight so far? Or let us know where you're tuning in from. I usually do that at the beginning, but today I want to do things a little different. So again, let us know what your favorite takeaway so far is tonight. The other thing I wanted to back up and let you guys know about, and I'm speaking this particular thing, I'm speaking from experience on. But Ray, you mentioned a little while ago, that some people are depressed and they really need the help. But one thing that we have to be mindful of, and it's a little tricky and it's a little fine line, but if you're dealing with somebody that's depressed, they may not always know it, or they may be in denial. So we got to be able to, work through that and, get to the bottom of the problem and try to solve it. But my question for you, Ray, is what are some different strategies that investors or new investors can use to buy pre-foreclosures?
To buy pre-foreclosures? So each state, it works a little bit different. But so there's going to be a deadline when the sale happens. The best deals are going to, the best deals in a hot area, and typically an urban area, are always going to be pre-foreclosures. But that doesn't mean you can't get good deals. In our last 2 coaching calls, we've sent out a team of people to evaluate the deals, to look at the sales prices, and the last 2 months, we've looked at the deals coming up, and we said, is this investor grade? Is this something that we could have bought at the auction? Or is it something we'd have been better at buying a pre-foreclosure? And we're seeing that we can buy good deals at the auction, and because we run the analysis, we look at the ARV after repair value, and we're finding that there's deals in both places. Why I love pre-foreclosures is because I can do creative financing, and there's really, a deal, a real estate. When you buy real estate and you're doing creative real estate, usually there's a promise to do something later. So you could call that a promissory note, and it typically involves cash, but it doesn't. And I'm choosing my words carefully because each one of those things I'm saying that's a little bit unexpected is an opportunity to structure that deal in a way that will work for the parties. It may or may not be cash is the most important. It may be that cash is not the most important aspect of the transaction. So it's important to think about, you're making a promise when you're doing a creative deals to usually do something in the future, which is look at that like a promissory note. And so pre-foreclosures gives us that opportunity to do cool things, fancy things, pay some now, pay some later, or maybe not pay anything, or have an option, or there's 100 different things we can do in a pre-foreclosure. When it comes to buying at the foreclosure, it's pretty cut and dry. You write it, you bring cashier's checks at the day of the foreclosure, and you take the property. If you're buying after the foreclosure, like from an institution, there are some creative things we can do there, but our hands are really tied. And maybe some people have some ideas, but the first thing that pops into my head is, there's 2 or 3 things we can do. If it's a big institution, there's really one thing you can do. You could turn a contract in when and if it ever becomes available, because once it goes in that pipeline, they typically won't let you buy it out of that pipeline with a big institution. So that's usually not an option. Like a Bank of America, Wells Fargo, once it goes in there, it's hard to get it out of there. It's just when they get ready, a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 4 years later, when it comes on the market, then you can compete with everybody else. And if they put it on MLS properly and there's no shenanigans going on, then you have a chance of buying it. Now, there's some really neat strategies we can use when we're making those offers there's incentives we can give sellers, like realtors, for example, to take our offer over other people's offers. And so probably don't want to get into that tonight because there's 2 or 3 ways to do that. But we don't have a lot of choices in the post foreclosure world. If it's an individual, well, remember that individual at the 1 minute after the foreclosure, he's now, if he was the one doing the foreclosing, then or she, then they become the owner 1 minute later. And a lot of people, they don't want to have nothing to do with the property. They didn't want to have nothing to do with it when they sold it to the person they just foreclosed on. And now it's probably in worse shape. There's all kinds of things. So if it's an individual, we have some options there. If it's a small institution, we have some options. We've bought foreclosures where post foreclosures, and we call those OREs or REOs. Usually it's REO, which is real estate owned, REO, real estate owned. So we would normally buy that from the smaller institutions, and we had a really good relationship with one, and every one of them that they did, we financed 100% of it at the when they took it back. We said we'll buy it, and they gave us really good financing when we financed 100% of it. So we didn't even have to bring money to the table. So so there are some options, some creative options on REO. So pre foreclosure, lots of creative things we can do. During the foreclosure, it's cash talks, baby. And then after the foreclosure, it's usually cash, but just depending on what the situation is, there's some options. One other thing we do on foreclosures is sometimes we will buy the note before the sale. So let's say James owes me $100,000 on this house. Somebody could come along and say, well, can I buy that $100,000 note from you and this is where the negotiation comes in, but somebody may offer me $100,000 on that property. And it may be that the person that's offering that probably might be watching the auctions and know that this is, if it goes to auction, it might sell for $130,000 or $150,000. So, having market knowledge, having intel, I mean, that's how wars are won. That's how nations are built. And so we really, really want to become masters at gathering intel. And same with the people in the pre-foreclosure. You got to talk to people. You got to try to solve their problem. You got to help them, and you've got to get information and find out what they're up against. And if you get really good information, you can usually come up, not usually, but a lot of times come up with a way of putting it together that works for everybody.
So Ray, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about there was probably about 3 strategies for convincing the sellers to take our offers. And then you said you really didn't want to get into it tonight because, we are on a limited schedule. But I want to twist your arm. I want you to talk about one of those, not all 3 of them, because, we do only have about 15 minutes left. But I do want you to talk about one for our audience.
Are you talking about pre-foreclosure or post-foreclosure?
Yeah. Pre-foreclosure.
Well, so a lot of, we kind of talked on the one for bankruptcy. So remember, anytime, so we got, what's one of our favorite sayings, James?
We have lots of them.
Yeah, but what's our favorite acronym?
Oh, well, is it COM or MFO? I can't remember which one.
What's your favorite?
I like COM, but I think
MFO is my favorite. And what is the PG version of that definition?
Monster for outcomes.
Okay, there we go. That's the PG version. So the everything that stops you from getting what you want, I've come to view that as like it's an obstacle or an objection, right? So it's the same thing. So if you knock on a door and nobody answers it, that's an obstacle. How do you come over? They answer it and they tell you to get off my porch. That's an obstacle. How do you get over it? So everything we do, we want to become like masters or scientists at how to overcome objections, or MFO, right? Be a monster for overcoming objections. So that would be MFOOO. So But anyway, how to overcome these objections, how to overcome these obstacles, how to get the outcome that we want. And so, so you've got to have a strategy in the foreclosure business. When we go through our scripts, like on our coaching calls, if we go through our scripts, we actually go through about 15 different things that are potential objections. And guess what? They don't change. They're the same, right? It's unlikely that there's not going to be an objection on that list that we haven't already dealt with. And so one of the things that people will, there's several things, but just pick one of the things that would be an objection. And it might be, well, I'm just going to file bankruptcy. And we talked about that. So let's just talk a little bit more about that. So they say they're going to file bankruptcy. One way to overcome that objection is to try to understand what they hope to accomplish. Because what does filing a bankruptcy actually achieve for them? If they're in a position where they can't afford it, then what does that bankruptcy achieve? And I'll just tell you. So bankruptcy, and I was talking to Emma, I guess, about this yesterday or day before. A bankruptcy is an official decree that says any writ of possession, anything you're going to do to take a property from another person, a bankruptcy stops it. It's federal law. It overrides Texas law. It overrides city law. And so it stops it. And so and the word they use for that is a stay. And a stay means you stop it. So it's a stay of execution. So you got to, like I did an eviction on somebody once and they filed bankruptcy and the JP court wouldn't listen to the case because they filed that bankruptcy. And so I had to present evidence and get them to overturn that. But in order to get that property taken back out of the bankruptcy, you've got to have a release of the stay of execution. You got to have them. You got to have the bankruptcy court release that so that you can follow on that bankruptcy. So when you're stopping when you stop a foreclosure via bankruptcy, that's buying the seller time. So a strategy is a lot of times investors get owners to file a bankruptcy, but oftentimes the owner is filing that bankruptcy and spending $1,500 or $2,000 or $2,500. And then it allows them to stay in the house 3 months, 6 months. They have to go through an incredible amount of paperwork. And if there's a real chance that they can get it fixed and get the payment, get in a position where they can afford to make the payments and take care of their responsibilities, then in that position, bankruptcy serves its purpose. But probably 50% of the time, and I just made that number up, but a big percentage of the time, something's changed in their life and they're not going to be able to take care of that. So if I say, James, look, if you file bankruptcy, yes, you're getting to stay here 5 or 6 months, but that $5 or $10 or $15 or $20,000 of equity that you have, now you're lowering that. So when you finally do move out, because interest doesn't stop, so when you finally do move out, now you potentially won't have any equity, and then you won't have any choices. So that house or that thing you were going to buy or that deposit, down payment or deposit for an apartment, you lose that option because you filed that bankruptcy and you blew through, you and your attorney blew through the equity. So in reality, are you better off dealing with this now? Let's fix it. Let's solve the problem. Let's get you in a place, and then let me buy the house and give you the equity that you want for the house. So I know that was a long discussion, but I mean, that's kind of how, like, I talk to people when we're doing bankruptcy. I'm trying to understand how can I solve their problem? Because if I can solve their problem and I can give them what they need, then I'll get what I need.
And it sounds like you, in a friendly way, sometimes you kind of push them, because they don't want to do the bankruptcy. That's not their best interest. And then, of course, losing the property or having a foreclosure on their credit is also something that they don't want to have happen either.
Yeah, we talk about that, and we'll talk about forbearance, forgiveness of debt, what the issues are with forgiveness of debt. there's some real animals out there that really they don't care if they hurt people and take advantage of them. And you can't be that person in this business. Sometimes you're, it's not right to make a deal with somebody, especially if you can change the outcome that benefits them. And that's kind of been my philosophy. Sometimes deals are better off. You're better off just being a good Samaritan and helping people out, especially if they don't have a clear idea of better options. But oftentimes they really don't have an option. Their only option is to let go of the house because they can't afford it. And on the other hand, the lender is not a lender. A lot of people, there was a guy that got on Facebook and he was talking about how to hold the bankruptcy, how to keep the lenders from foreclosing on the house for 2 or 3 years. And I called the guy out on that because it's like, okay, let me get this straight. It's okay for you to screw over the lender, but and you somehow think that's ethical. But what about the account holders of the bank? What happens if the bank can no longer make mortgages because we go overboard and we protect the rights of the people over the rights, the contract that the people make with the bank? And if you want to destroy the mortgage business and you want to get it to where people can't borrow money to buy houses, that's not going to benefit anybody either. So there's got to be a balance. I mean, it's got to be where the laws are fair, that we can enforce them. And when they came along and said, well, you can't evict anybody, it's like, okay, that's easy to say. But on the other hand, the American people pay trillions of dollars to allow people to stay in their houses. And then also they got landlords shut down where they can't make the property pay the rent or pay the taxes or pay the insurance. And so these landlords are now, being turned upside down. So there's got to be a sense of equity in these decisions. And I know it's, if you're a politician or you're a person trying to help people out, sometimes you help people out and then you hurt other people. Sorry, I got off that was a rabbit hole. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you've gone down about 5 or 6 rabbit holes tonight, but we forgive you. And in fact, I told you before, our audience loves when you go down rabbit holes. But guys, is this something that you want to be involved in? Are you looking to get into, investing in pre-foreclosures? We have some opportunities for you. So if that's something that you're interested in, one of the things that we actually do with our students is work these leads and we help them put these deals together. So if that's something you want to know more about, leave a comment below. And the comment I want you to leave is Ray's favorite acronym, MFO. Leave that in the comments, MFO. And then
Monster for Outcomes.
We'll reach out to you and give you some more information on how you can work with us and work these leads and get some deals going. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover that you feel we left out tonight on the topic of pre-foreclosures and foreclosures? Well,
even if you don't want to go kind of take an accelerated path on learning real estate, or and coaching is not for you, I still think what you should do is wherever you're at, you should go to the foreclosure sales where you're at and try to learn the process. It was one of the people that we took to the foreclosure sale this month. They've been 3 or 4 times, and I explained to them some of the things that were going down, and they were starting to observe them. And there's a lot of things that happen at the foreclosure sale that it's sort of like a motor under the hood. If you don't raise that hood, you don't know what all is going on. And so I would say you need, when they have these local auctions, go to the auctions, find out what's going on, find out who the players are, find out how they bid on the properties, take some properties with you, list of properties with you, do your ARV, your after repair value. It wouldn't hurt if they're close by, drive by, look at them, try to figure out the math, and this is before you ever even consider bidding, but try to find out how to make this work by actually going through the steps. And if you're, I know, are we still doing the open coaching call on the first Tuesday of the month, James? Is that
Yes,
still
we
going?
are.
Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
that was actually last night.
yeah, so I know they were thinking about maybe changing that, but like last night we did the coaching call. And we talked specifically about what makes a good deal, what doesn't make a good deal. We looked at properties that were actually going through the foreclosures, and it's a, you know, pass or play kind of deal. And we figured out, I don't think you were on that call, James, but we figured out, okay, this is a pass, this is a play, this is a pass, this is a play. If you want to consistently buy properties, that's one of the ways that you can buy. If you, it's a lot of work, but if you do the work, you can consistently buy a deal a month at the foreclosure auction. If you want to do the work, you consistently buy a deal a month prior to the foreclosure auction. So right there, you can get 1 to 2 houses of inventory every month, but you got to be willing to spend the 20 or 30 hours it takes to get that done. You got to learn how to do the comps. You got to learn how to do your due diligence, and you got to learn how to either do the title search or get the title search done. And then you got to make sure you know how to get through the auction process and bid properly, and then make sure when like that your exit strategy is the right exit strategy, because you can do things wrong and still survive, but why do them wrong if you can do them right and make your numbers even better? So I would suggest that you get out, you know, get in the car, go down to it and get involved, see the action, and next thing you know, you'll be energized, excited, and you'll see it's really going down on a regular basis.
Yeah, just taking that time to do that and going down to the auction, you know, bringing some properties with you, you know, it's pretty eye-opening. You can actually see, what's going on in the neighborhood, you know, and you know, from a wholesaler rehabber's perspective, I guess you can say, maybe I'm a little off there, but you know, if you're watching a few different properties that are in a few different subdivisions and you see somebody buy a property at the auction, well, typically if they're buying at the auction, well, not typically, they're paying cash. So that's a cash buyer for that neighborhood. And it kind of basically shows you, you know, what you can get in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and then also you find out who the cash buyers are and who the guys that talk to or walk the talk and the people who just do the talk. You can find out where the real deal makers are. The other thing is, oftentimes, I mean, this has happened several times in my career, is I go look at properties and then there's a property right next to it and I do the research on that and I buy that deal. I've many times I've had agents say, hey, Ray, here's a house over in this neighborhood. I start doing comps in that neighborhood and I find out another house is on the market that looks like a better deal. And I end up negotiating that deal and making an offer. And the moral of the story is, when you're out there looking and you're touching things and feeling things and working the numbers, these things just fall in your lap. At least that's been my experience.
I thought you were going to say the moral of the story was you ended up buying both of them.
Well, in fact, the last time that happened, I had a very persistent realtor, and she kept saying, Ray, this is a deal, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't meet any kind of deal criteria. And this was before the market was so hot. If it was so hot, as hot as it is now, should have been right. But, oh, it's a deal, it's a deal, it's a deal. And I started doing comps on it. And I said, I won't say her name, but I said, this is not investor grade yet, you know? And then she'd go back and renegotiate or whatever. And then she'd come back and I'd say, no, look at this deal over here. In fact, I'm going to make an offer on that. And we ended up buying that other property. And ultimately we ended up buying that property too, but we had to change the deal quite a bit with her because she doesn't think like an investor. She doesn't, you know, she's trying to make it work for the seller because she's representing the seller. But as an investor, you know, it'd be nice to give people what they want, but you can't be upside down on these things either. So, but when you get involved and you start getting active, these things just start jumping out at you. I remember the first time I went snorkeling. I'd look at the reef and the ocean bottom, and I couldn't hardly see nothing. And the last time I went snorkeling, it was when I was in the service. We'd go snorkeling like every couple of weekends while I was stationed overseas. And the last time I went, I could see everything. I could see the zebra fishes, I could see the barracudas, I could see the several different types of urchins. I could see all that. And the first time I went, I didn't see any of it. And so sometimes you need a tour guide because you don't know a deal. You're standing on a deal and you don't even know it. Or you're just one little creative thought away from turning something that wouldn't work into a deal of a lifetime.
All right, great stuff. Great show. Thank you, Ray. We are out of time. So guys, if you like that, hit the thumbs up, hit the wow, hit the heart, show us some love, hit the share button, leave a comment, let us know. These live trainings are for you guys. You know, if there's a topic that you want us to talk about, you know, let us know in the comments.
Hey, by the way, next week, you know what I want you to make a note of this, James. I want to talk about how I begged one time this guy to buy a property from me. It was a big time home buyer in our neighborhood, in our town. And I begged him to buy it. And he wouldn't buy it. And he'd give me some crappy little offer on it. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, or one of the best things, is because it forced me to make a better deal than I would have ever made with him. And there's a lot, and this was a guy that bought over 1,000 houses, and you know, supposed to be a superstar. He couldn't figure out how to make it work, so he just offered me a lowball offer. And we'll do maybe a case study on that, and I'll show you all how I turned that into a home run.
So you want to do a case study on a house that you begged a guy to buy,
and he refused to, and because he refused to buy it, or he wasn't willing to pay me anything near what I thought it was worth. So it forced me to go back to the drawing board, and I ended up making a whole lot more money than I ever would have by letting him buy it. So I'm glad he was dumb enough not to know how to buy it.
All right, cool. So that'll be next week's show. We'll have a case study. Don't forget, we have the radio show on Saturday. And then in San Antonio, we have our meeting on Tuesday. We're going to have Equity Trust there. And then next Saturday in Houston, we have Tom Berry coming to our RIA in Houston. Exciting meeting. Lots of stuff coming up. Hal, can you put in the comments a link to our calendar so everybody can see our upcoming events? We got lots of things going up on the calendar. So we're definitely listening to you guys, and we're making things happen for y'all. And on that note, I'm out of here. It's been an incredibly long day.
Well, more importantly, did you get anything done?
Yes, we were very productive. It was a very productive day, and I have earned my time off, so I'm taking off to go see my wife and go to dinner, and then be back at it again tomorrow.
Okay,
so have a great night, and we will see y'all next time.
Okay, take care, buddy.